To welcome Aoife, as I mentioned at the start of the webinar, from the National Traveller MABS Money Advice and Budgeting Services. So Aoife, I've given an introduction. We're really looking forward to hearing your presentation, and you're really welcome today. Thank you so much for taking the time, and we'll hand over to you.
Cheers, thank you very much, Katie, and hello everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to chat to you today. I'm just going to put this at the end before we even started. So my name is Aoife Foley, and I'm the National Education Worker with National Traveller MABS. And I am in my current position for the last 12 months. So I've been solely working during COVID. So it has been an interesting learning space. So first of all, who are National Traveller MABS? Because I'm aware a lot of people don't know who we are. So we're an advocate for financial inclusion of travellers in Ireland, and we're part of the MABS family, so the Money Advice and Budgeting Service. And their purpose is to help people who are over indebted or who are having difficulties with managing their money. And we work to reduce poverty, discrimination and financial exclusion of travellers in Ireland by working with the traveller community and other traveller organisations to change policy and practice. And that is kind of the core of what we do, is that we work with the traveller community, all of our work is informed by the community, which is hugely important. So our role is to highlight issues of over-indebtedness and exclusion, to promote alternative methods of money management, to empower travellers to access legal and affordable savings and credit, and to support both MABS and the traveller community to ensure ease of access for the service. So there's kind of four main areas where we work in. One is research and policy. The main focus of that is looking at the traveller accommodation crisis, which we have an accommodation crisis for the general population in the country. It's even more acute among the traveller community. There's over 1,000 families on the social housing list. There's a lack of culturally appropriate accommodation. Travellers are on the homeless list, overnumbered. We have a pilot project then looking at addressing energy poverty in traveller specific accommodation. So that would be things like caravans, mobile homes, making sure that they're properly insulated, that they're not running up huge debts in order to the heat, basically. And then our main research and policy area is financial exclusion as experienced by travellers. And I just have a couple of our reports there at the bottom. And that would be mostly the purvey of Michelle Kearns. She's our research officer. Community education is where I come in to it. And my job is to support local MABS in providing education to local traveller community, but that could also be citizens information. It could be local groups that are looking for support in providing financial education to a traveller group. And then developing new educational resources is a big part, and what we've been doing quite a lot of. And then providing information resources comes under our community education outreach. We also have a development worker, Denise Collins, and we work with what we call consultative groups, which are the local traveller primary healthcare teams that are dotted around the country. And basically we try to link in with them to find out what are the issues people are experiencing on the ground day to day, and how we can help or feed into those issues. So just some of the stuff there, I just have a photo there of our team in Newcastle West, and just the images were images because it was through community ed we became aware of feedback we were getting where people weren't accessing services because they felt like they weren't represented. So when they were looking at flyers or things like that, the images they were seeing, they felt excluded. So we worked with primary health care team in Newcastle West and one in Clondalkin, and developed a library of images that we use on our flyers, and the engagement increased when the flyers went out, where people could actually see themselves being represented. And then our final area of work is information provision. So most of that comes from our website, Facebook, Twitter, and we also have 2 newsletters that we publish throughout the year. The Theory Times, which generally is for MABS services, and then the newsletter, the National Traveller MABS, which goes out to travel organisations and community members, just to keep them updated on what we're doing. So that's kind of the overview of who we are. But the main thing that informs our work is the traveller experience, and that's really important. And I'm just going to go through a couple of points just to give you an idea of the traveller experience, because that is what shapes everything that we do. So in terms of health, life expectancy is 8 to 10 years less than the general population, and the suicide rate in the traveller community is 6 times higher than general population, 7 times higher among young traveller men. And that is a real crisis in the community at the moment. And we're all very aware that financial issues feed into that massively. So that is something that we try to feed into where we can. In terms of accommodation, as I already said, travellers experiencing a massive accommodation crisis, overcrowding in existing homes. Travellers are overrepresented in the homeless figures, and we have the affordability issue, which is across the board for everyone. It's not just the traveller community, but it is compounded a little bit more. And over a quarter of travellers are living in accommodation that have leaking roofs, damp walls, or rotting window frames or floors, which is in itself, all these things act as barriers to participation. They're bad on their own. So in terms of education, 70% of travellers aged 18 to 24 has completed the junior cycle, but aren't in further education or training, and that's in comparison to 5% of the general population. So there's a huge number that we're missing, basically. And only 1% of travellers are engaged in 3rd level education. Now that has been targeted by the department, and there has been modest increases in it. And then in terms of poverty and social exclusion, 40% are living in households that have difficulties making ends meet week to week. 28% of traveller children in Ireland grow up in severe material deprivation. 31% live in households that cannot pay for basic everyday items that the majority of us take for granted. And 63% of Irish travellers don't have a bank account. And that then, all these poverty, social exclusion feeds into discrimination, the overall. So experiencing negative stereotyping and discrimination in the media and socially. 65% report experiencing discrimination when looking for work. 27% of parents say that their children are bullied in school because they're a traveller, and that feeds into the huge dropout rates as well. A lot of children who leave say because they feel, whether it's from the school authorities or from their peers, that is a huge issue. And then I think probably the biggest one is 52% experience hate motivated harassment on a daily basis. So hate motivated harassment is whether it's name calling, being denied services, it can be online, but that's over half of the community are experiencing that every day. So obviously that's going to have a huge effect on mental health as well. All of those things as well feed into education, accessing education, staying in education, re-engaging with education. And it's really important to create spaces where people feel safe in coming and where they feel represented. So community education is a core part of our work in National Traveller MABS, and it plays a really important role in establishing contact between the communities experiencing poverty and services. So whether it's MABS, whether it's citizens information, and it also enhances the local services that MABS and citizens information can provide, because they're getting an understanding of the issues that the community are experiencing at any one time. So our main community education output is our money management community education courses. So the courses can be anything to deal with budgeting, saving, borrowing, dealing with debt, tackling legal and illegal money lending. And normally what we would do was, so we might reach out to different groups, or sometimes groups contact us, and we would sit down and do a needs analysis with the group to find out what can we do for them, what they want from us. And then we would engage between, now sometimes we would deliver the training ourselves. More often than not, we would engage with the local MABS, if there is a local MABS, because we want to build those connections. And we would always make sure that the local MABS are fully informed in how they're delivering the course. And we would always advocate the use of materials that are designed for working with travellers, that are culturally appropriate. So where they are, so we have a way of life, we have overcoming illegal debt. A way of life is a money management course, and in it there's case studies that are created in conjunction with traveller groups and MABS, so that we're giving an accurate representation of what people are actually dealing with. Overcoming illegal debt is a programme which is about overcoming legal debt, dealing with money lenders. And to go with that, I just have some stills from it. A National Traveller MABS created a little video. It's called a deal's a deal about an illegal money lender, that was written, created, shot by members of the community, and is used as the resource for that training. Then during COVID, our face-to-face, like everybody else's, stopped. And we had faced the same barriers as everyone else in terms of delivering online courses. It wasn't really a goer for us because most of the people we were trying to reach didn't have access to broadband, didn't have access to computers, maybe didn't have the skills or the literacy skills to access them. So a lot of our work came through Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter became our three, because people could access them on their phones easily. And we started out doing leaflets, information leaflets. So they're just a couple of examples of what we were doing. But then we kind of realized we were missing a trick in that, because we're dealing with people who mightn't have the greatest literacy skills, they were seeing, and probably like ourselves, when you're scrolling and you see another leaflet or ream of writing, you just keep scrolling. You don't want to engage with it at all. So from there, we went to videos. So we were also engaged with, so these are just two leaflets that we did in conjunction with MABS. The first one, Managing Your Money During COVID-19, was developed based on feedback we were getting from groups on the ground, where when the social welfare payments changed to 2 weekly, people suddenly couldn't cope because they were used to doing it week by week. And by the end of the second week, we're running out of money. So we developed the leaflet, and there was 15,000 of those leaflets were distributed through the MABS offices and through St. Vincent de Paul. And we also worked with MABS in developing returning to work from the social welfare payment, including PUP, to help people to budget for the break they might have in their income between when their social welfare stopped and their first wages. And they were distributed as well through St. Vincent de Paul and MABS offices nationwide. So as I said, we had to look at a different way in terms of community education to provide information during the pandemic. So one of the first things that we did was because we were getting a lot of feedback that maybe there was only one computer in the house. For a lot of people, there was none, and you had 3 or 4 children trying to work off a mobile phone. But then it was pointed out to us that a lot of people had an Xbox or had a PlayStation, and they could be used for going online and learning. So we did up our videos about how to access that information and we got them out there. And to be honest, it was probably one of the biggest things we ever had in terms of engagement. We suddenly had over 2,000 views on a video, and it was nearly 1,000% more than what we have. So we suddenly had engagement, and suddenly it became, this was how the easiest way for us to reach out to our core community and to get feedback at the same time. So we went on then for our community education that we released some little videos. They were all short, sweet, to the point. And basically it was just to help people with what was going on. So when last Christmas, when Brexit happened and suddenly we had to pay VAT and customs on things coming in from the UK, just what is a budget, explaining what a budget is, with some little friendly characters to help people stay engaged. And then the COVID fines and things, how to pay those online, how to appeal them. Registering as a vulnerable customer for gas and electricity, when preparing for college, what happens when you contact MABS, because that was something we were getting all this engagement, and the question we were being asked was, well, what happens when I contact MABS? Because before it was fine, you could walk into an office, but with COVID, everything was closed. So it was, how does it work now? So we developed all these little videos. All these videos are available on our website, on Facebook, YouTube. They're all there if anyone wants to use them at any stage. And probably one of the projects that I personally am most proud of that we worked with, myself and Denise, our development officer, that's her down here. We, with one of our consultative groups in Newcastle West, we did a weekly Facebook series, Money Matters, as part of their Wellness Wednesdays, where each week we had a different topic. So whether it was budgeting, whether it was saving, whether it was money and mental health, we did a little 5-10 minute video each week where the primary healthcare workers came up with the questions, we came up with the answers, and we also got comments on Facebook where people asked questions that we were able to reply to the following week in the videos, to get the information out there. And the videos, the primary healthcare teams were able to share the videos through WhatsApp as well, which suddenly we had a much wider audience of people who were engaging with us. Again, all those videos are available on our Facebook and social media pages. So that is that bit. So the emerging from COVID. So I had initially had post-COVID there until I realized we're not quite there just yet, but we're getting there. But the idea of what's next for us, from our point of view, like a lot of yourselves, the people that we're working with, all our community education programs, we're trying to get them off the ground again, get face-to-face interactions happening to re-establish those relationships and get people to reconnect. So that's kind of our number one priority, is to re-establish those relationships and start the face-to-face classes going again. We're also hoping to run an event in November for College Awareness Week about the financial implications of, we all know the financial implications of education. It's expensive, whether it's primary school, secondary school, college. But one of the pieces from meetings and different things like this all through the summer we were getting was people contacting us going about Susie Grant, about going, I've never experienced this, I don't understand it, what do we do, what's available? So that's one of the things that we're looking at for this event, is to have a panel to say, this is what's available, and we'll have a resource that will be launched that day as well, in terms of what financial supports are there, how do I access them, what does all this language mean? Because for a lot of traveller families, they might be the first to attend third level. It might be something their parents have never experienced. So it's to support both the parents and the students, an overall resource. And like that, like again, like all of you and everyone else's, COVID did expose a huge gap that exists in terms of educational disadvantage and in terms of not being able to access, you know, information because of broadband issues, overcrowding where there wasn't, you know, spaces for people to study and be quiet spaces. So we work very closely with the Irish Traveller Movement, with their education working group, where we feed in and we also hear the issues on the ground. And then, like yourselves, we try to address those in whatever way we can, whether it's in practical training, whether it might be feeding into, you know, a government submission, things like that. And that we are, like, we're always here if anyone ever does have a group that they would like some help or like some resources, feel free to get in touch with us.
Thank you so much, Aoife, for a very simple, informative presentation, which I absolutely agree with, just very easy to understand and kind of get the information that's needed. So again, really, really useful. And I think lots of connections are made. If people are looking for additional information or want to link in with Aoife, we'll send information on after the session today. Yeah, some really interesting feedback in terms of you know, Jane talking about systematic discrimination, just in terms of people accessing education around whether it's higher ed, and people looking for passports, just that natural kind of idea that people have those things, and just barriers that without organizations like Jane's in the community that can support and advocate for you know, people who are really disadvantaged, could actually shut the door and just stop them from continuing on. Jane had another example about a lady trying to access childcare, and the fee, you know, being asked by the childcare provider, which is not allowed. And again, the community organization advocating. So I think it is that systematic discrimination, and something I know Jane mentioned there, equality legislation has been looked at, and submissions are being due at the end of October. So AONTAS will look into that and we'll get back. So I think that could be a really, really important opportunity maybe to look at some of those issues. And Jane was saying that there is, and I think this is from other webinars in the last couple of weeks, we have seen that there is a real mix of organizations having some face-to-face if possible, but also sticking to the online for other people, because while some learners really want that face-to-face, others, especially we've seen lone parents who might have childcare issues, are actually the blended model or that online might actually suit them better. So I think it is a challenge for organizations to balance both of those face-to-face plus online, and meet the needs of both of those cohorts, and maybe meet in the middle a little bit. I know Maria from UNCASAN was giving feedback there back to some face-to-face classes, but again, the blended online is really popular. And I guess one kind of silver lining to COVID is that there's people around the country that might be able to access some of those online courses, which again can be beneficial for those attending online courses if they can link in with people that they might not necessarily normally get to link in with. So I think lots of food for thought in terms of some of those challenges on the ground. And I know Jane was saying that, you know, and we've heard this in the last couple of weeks as well, there is this kind of, some people are struggling to maybe make a decision about whether they're going back or not, or there's community centres or different places that mightn't have fully made a decision about whether they're going to reopen for classes or different groups to come in. We're still trying to wait. We're in that kind of interim period to see what's going to happen, and so that can be a little bit tricky for people to make decisions.
I think we're really interested in how were Xboxes and PlayStations, how were they even used for learning. So we will be sending on the link for that, because we've now got your videos, Aoife. So we'll be sending on that. But I have heard before it was a great carrot and stick approach for a lot of mommies and daddies as well. You know, we'll get you the license that you can go online, but also you have to now do your classwork. So so we talked about that, and then we talked about Maynooth as well. Basically, obviously you have one of the higher cohorts of basically mature students as travellers coming in. Trying to get that the right way around. Nima, if I'm wrong, please correct me. So yeah, and that was great work as well. And I know Judith is looking at basically getting people in. She's actually hired someone that has worked with the traveller movement in Galway before, and again hoping that there's going to be a few more learners that she'll be able to get in as well. So that end of things we talked about. Recruitment, slow, difficult, but it is getting there, and for a lot of the groups, they are just basically plugging away and getting the learners in. And just going back to the stats that Aoife had, in fairness, and some of the startling stats that you think that things have moved on so much, and then you find out they haven't. So again, it was just a big thank you to Aoife for the presentation as well, and definitely for the videos and stuff like that there. So yeah, that's from our room.
And it's just, I suppose, the complexity of the forms that need to be filled in, and I think maybe some organisations might need to be mindful of that. Like if they're, like obviously our team would support learners to fill in these forms, but they could be very confusing, and learners can be embarrassed if they have literacy issues. Just last week, Lily was saying at our open day, there was one learner who was really struggling with the form and was quite embarrassed by it, and the team were able to spot that gently and just to be able to help them fill it in, and another learner spotted it as well, so I think and we're very aware of that. So with our online form, we'll always say if somebody has a problem with our own online application form, to contact us and we'll help you guide you through it, and we can do a paper record and a team member can fill it in for you afterwards.
No, that's really useful to note, Maria. And I know you've been having the weekly open days for Oncason as well, which you're keeping going, which I think, like you said, it is a brilliant opportunity if you can, and I know even through the information campaigns that we've been running, but it is having an opportunity where members of the community can come in, get some general information and ask questions without maybe making that commitment or really having the information. And I thought what Jane said was really interesting as well, in terms of they've been able to increase engagement with the local community during COVID, because there was a need around, I think, Jane, you were saying, delivering food, and that allowed you to have a new connection with different members of the community and build those relationships to maybe, have greater engagement around community ed in the future, or other services that might be needed. So I think in some ways there have been opportunities there, but it is really being mindful of, and I think learners are so lucky when they get to connect with all the amazing organizations that are here today. But the issue sometimes is for those that have been most disadvantaged during COVID and not knowing about those organizations, or finding a person who can advocate on their behalf, give them the support that they need. And that outreach piece has been a struggle, because not everybody is online. So I think it's even coming together, as a collective, to look at ways that we can reach those members of the community most in need, to ensure that they have the support, because unfortunately if they don't meet them, then the barriers are there and they can't overcome them. So I think that is really important. We look forward to seeing you really soon at another AONTAS event. Thanks so much.